When we're immersed in grief, it can seem like there is no other reality. It can be frightening to look to the future because all we can see is more of the pain that is already overwhelming us. And while many of the griefs we experience will never completely disappear, especially when we lose someone we have loved deeply and intensely, there is always a reality beyond all-consuming grief. And even though we may carry our sense of loss for the rest of our lives, we can still find a life that is whole, joyful, creative, and vibrant. The question is, how do we get there? Well, that's our focus for this video. Hi there, I'm John. I'm the founder and the host of evofaith.com and of the Evo Faith Tribe, which is a progressive community for those who no longer find institutional Christianity helpful. If you're looking for a safe and welcoming space where you can ask your questions and speak your truth without fear of judgment or rejection, then we'd love for you to join us. Just go to evofaith.com or to evofaithtribe.com to check us out or to sign up. And don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe so that you don't miss any future videos. Richard Rohr has often said that there are only two things that can transform us and break us out of dualistic, shallow spirituality: great love and great suffering. And since most suffering is related to the loss of something or someone we have loved, these two experiences almost always go together. Now, last week, we spoke about the various expressions or stages in the process of grieving. But while we may be jumping around between denial and anger and bargaining and depression and acceptance and hopefully finding meaning, there is also another process at work in our grief. It's a process that we can see in so much of life. It happens when we're dealing with change. And grief is also, of course, a process of change. But this process also happens during conflict. It happens in any creative endeavor. And it happens when we face grief. This process consists of 4 parts, and each part requires different attitudes and actions for us to navigate them well. I have already spoken about this process before on Evo Faith, particularly with regard to spiritual evolution. But I think it might be helpful to go through this process, these 4 stages, again now in relation to grief. Any grief journey begins with a catalyst, and that's usually a death or the loss of something or someone important in some way. Many of the stages of grief or the expressions of grief that we spoke about last week is about coming to terms with this catalyst, with whatever it has happened that has led us into the grief. And no matter how much we may have been expecting the loss, when it does happen, it's always a shock. And we find ourselves doing everything we can to wish ourselves back to how things were. But once the catalyst has happened, there is no going back. The old world we long for is no more, but we can't yet see the new world that is coming. And so we feel adrift, aimless and empty. If you add to this the fact that the catalyst always throws us into chaos, which is the next stage, that makes it feel even harder. In chaos, nothing is as it was, and we don't know how to navigate this crazy, emotional, disorganized, and distressing space. We can never predict how long the chaos will remain, but the more we fight it, the longer we will have to endure it. The only thing we can do with chaos is move through the darkness one step at a time until we finally reach the next stage. And if we do that, at some point in the chaos, and we're never sure when, why, or how that point will come about, but at some point we get clarity. And clarity is when we begin to see the new world beyond the chaos, even though we're not there yet. We begin to feel glimmers of hope again, and the pain that we've known, while it may still be there, it usually is still there, it stops defining us, it stops consuming us. And if we're able to keep moving toward the light, then eventually we will find that clarity becoming a reality, and we'll get to a place of cohesion, a place where the pieces fit together again, where we begin to feel whole again, where the chaos is over, and we now know that we're in this new reality. It begins to make sense, and we can begin to rebuild and to make a new life in this new world that we've come to. We may still be carrying grief within us, but we know we will survive it. We may feel joy again for the first time since our loss. We may begin to laugh again. But the primary feeling is that we are alive. We want to be alive, and we allow ourselves to feel, to connect, to dream, and to create again. We're no longer defined by death or by grief, but by life and hope and new possibilities. And we've all experienced so much grief in the last couple of years. And for many of us, it seems like we'll never get out of the chaos. But I want to say today that there is a land beyond the grief, and we will get there if we will allow ourselves to. It'll require a little faith. It'll require courage. We'll have to be aware of what's happening within us and around us. We'll need to share stories with others where we can, as much as we can. And we'll need to be generous toward ourselves and each other. But when we cling firmly to these qualities, we will discover that one day we wake up and realize that we are in a new world. And we know, maybe for the first time, that we will be okay now. So where are you in this process of grief? How can you nurture the qualities of faith, courage, awareness, story sharing, and generosity in your own life today? What would most help you to find your way through the chaos to clarity and then to cohesion? There's so much more we could say about this, but I'd be grateful if you would share your stories and we can find comfort and support one another in this difficult but transforming journey. Feel free to share this video with anyone who needs it. And if this has been helpful for you, I'd be very grateful if you'd give it a thumbs up. I wish you strength and hope in your grief journey. And I'll see you next time.